Hilarity ensues when Henry and Punky try to get tickets to see the Cubs play the Padres in the National League Championship Series. Then things get serious when Punky wrestles with urban fear. All on Punky Brewster. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows, and today we're going to be talking about 80s sitcom Punky Brewster.
Beloved 80s sitcom Punky Brewster.
I wasn't sure if it was beloved.
Well, some people beloved it.
Yeah. This is kind of a listener request, right?
Yes, our friend Beth, who I've known for quite a while, she actually suggested this a couple of seasons ago, and we didn't quite get to it at the time, but the show is more accessible to us now, you might say.
Yeah.
And we kept it on the short list, and now we are ready to talk about it. So if you do have something you want to suggest, we'll probably get to it eventually.
Yeah.
And boy, did I get to Punky Brewster, because now that all these episodes are available on streaming, I've been watching probably way more than I should.
Wow.
Which doesn't take a lot to reach that threshold, but still.
I've watched 3, and we're going to talk about 2 of them today. But intriguing. I didn't really watch this as a kid.
Yeah, I did watch it as a kid, I think.
I saw it. I think maybe I was just a little too old for it.
Yeah, I think I don't remember watching it on Sundays so much as I think maybe they showed it at one of those reruns things in the mornings.
Uh-huh.
Like, when I've talked about Facts of Life and Silver Spoons were on, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
But hey, like every kid, I was watching 60 Minutes, like
that's right.
And Sunday nights. You kidding? Punky Brewster, forget about it.
Yeah, and I remember that there was a cartoon for a season too.
Yeah, that I remember the theme song for that, but I never watched the cartoon.
Yeah, I may have watched it. I remember just enough to know it was even less appealing to me than the show.
Yeah, well, it had some kind of mythical space creature,
something,
some weird creature.
Yeah,
as a sidekick.
Yeah,
they got rid of Henry, I think, and
I think he was in it because.
Henry was in it. Oh yeah, he's in the credits or whatever.
And George Gaynes' biography or whatever mentioned that he did the voice on it. So,
I'm hoping that you mean like an epic length book biography of George Gaynes that you read in preparation for the show.
Oh yeah.
David Halberstam presents George Gaynes.
George Gaynes. Yeah. No, but he did seem to have a fascinating life.
There's more to him than.
Yeah.
That meets the eye.
For instance, he was born in Europe and partly lived in England. A lot of different, just an interesting background.
Yeah, he was a veteran.
Yeah, theater work, soaps.
Yeah, I guess he was pretty big on the soaps for a while.
Yeah.
But I didn't know him at all until Punky Brewster, and I was a little young. Well, although I might have watched some for the Police Academy movies.
Yeah.
But
he strikes me as someone who, in that period, did a little bit of a Leslie Nielsen and went from dramatic work to applying the same techniques to comedy a little bit.
That's a good call,
especially in Police Academy.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to find that he had much of a career before the early '80s with Police Academy, Tootsie, and Punky Brewster.
That's right, Tootsie.
So, but he did. But the show, unfortunately, is not Henry Warnemont.
Boy,
that would be a great name for a show, though.
Yeah, I would have watched all of those already.
Yeah.
He's a delight.
He is.
Yeah.
So,
and in fact, watching it, I just find myself, trying to repeat his lines in my best version of his voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Really, it just comes down to one word: Punky.
That's good.
Punky. Oh. Why don't you have a mother, Punky? I feel like it's a little James Mason in my head.
Yeah.
Without the scratchiness.
Yeah.
But in a similar vein.
I like it.
Yeah.
So I should mention, though, that, again, thanks, Beth, for suggesting this.
Yes.
And that the NBC app, the NBC website, has, I thought it was the whole series, but it's not. There, many episodes are missing for various reasons. But there's quite a big sampling of the show, which I had totally forgotten about this, that it was on NBC for only 2 seasons, and then it was syndicated for 2 seasons.
Right.
I did not recall that at all.
I didn't either.
I certainly didn't watch it when it was in syndication.
And like, was that the result of like some letter writing campaign or crayon drawing campaign? Because apparently it was not good in the ratings, but demographically, I swear I read that in the 2 to 11-year-old category, it was NBC's highest rated show.
Yeah.
It coveted 2 to... This is probably coveted.
The 2 to 11.
To buy stuff, yeah.
It even beat out real people for the 2 to 11 demographic?
Apparently.
Or Billingsley's show?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the 2 to 11-year-old demographic doesn't buy a lot of cars.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I find interesting is, the story is that, 60 Minutes was, all kidding aside, a ratings juggernaut, especially in the early 80s and like late 70s. It was at the very top of the ratings. And it seems like whenever I read about the history of Punky Brewster, which is quite often, of course, as you know.
Of course.
Yeah. It's mentioned that NBC was looking for a way to take on 60 Minutes and decided to go younger. But if you look at what they showed, including some things that we've talked about here, this wasn't a new concept.
Right.
I mean, maybe to go this young with Punky Brewster, like build a show around a kid, because it's like, Brennan Tartikoff had the idea to do a youth skewing show to go up against 60 Minutes. Well, like that's some kind of like big brainstorm.
Yeah.
They had Voyagers was on.
Right.
They had Our House apparently replaced Punky Brewster. Silver Spoons was already on the air. And in fact, the executive producer of Silver Spoons was the one tasked with creating this show, apparently. Yes. So that I don't get. So it's like, what do they expect? I mean, the show got creamed in the ratings by 60 Minutes, but everything did. Yeah. ABC, I looked up, had Ripley's Believe It or Not for a while. They had various versions of Walt Disney World programming.
Somehow I was watching all of these things. Yeah. Except for Punky Brewster. But, I mean, my dad watched 60 Minutes, so a lot of times I'd watch that. Mm-hmm. I definitely remember watching Ripley's Believe It or Not. Wow. With Jack Palance, of course. And what was the other thing you said? Voyagers, Silver Spoons. Our House, I watched some of that, yeah.
So, I mean, if you listen to all this stuff, everybody's going for younger viewers because they're just writing off like, the grown-ups are going to watch, and the urban audience is going to watch 60 Minutes to the urbane audience, perhaps I should say. And they're going for like these family-oriented programming, so hoping to get the kids in. So, I don't know what NBC was expecting, but apparently it just wasn't doing well. And then NBC could not sell the show in syndication, so they had to bring in somebody else to actually syndicate the show. NBC wasn't allowed to do that by the rules at the time. Back in the day when there was still regulation of television, and they had these quaint rules about primetime access and networks owning everything on the air. So I guess they squeezed 2 more seasons out of it in syndication, as I think Silver Spoons did, right? Had a year in syndication as well, or was that all?
I think, it was the last.
Yeah, so it wasn't uncommon back then, and other non-kid shows did the same thing, moved from network to syndication. But so Punky, like half of its run was actually off network.
Man. So the show, of course, starred Soleil Moon Frye, half-sister of Mino Palouse from Voyagers.
Yes, BOTNS icon, Mino.
Also half-sister of her other brother played the dude that wore sunglasses in E.T.
Oh, wow.
Like one of the older kid gang.
So quite a dynasty, this family.
Well, I think their mom was, at least her mom, was like a casting agent or something.
Ah, well, that helps.
Her / Mino's mom.
That certainly helps.
Yeah. Certainly, it seems like the character and she were sensations with kids of a certain age, and probably girls more. But.
Well, I remember there being, maybe cards. There was a doll.
Yeah.
Figures and like some kind of like little, not action figures, but there was merchandise.
Right.
It seemed like something that kids talked about and kids knew about it. So yeah, it seems unbelievable that it only lasted 2 years on NBC, and people know the show. I think Punky Brewster of a lot of the stuff we covered, we'll cover. This will have high Q ratings. It'll have strong name recognition with a lot of our audience.
Especially the 2 to 11-year-old audience.
Yes. How are we doing with our 2 to 11-year-old audience? Have you checked that lately?
We're not paying enough to get those kind of stats.
We can only guess.
We know the kids are on screens at an early age. So that'd be cool if we suddenly got like 1,000 random downloads and it was just some 2-year-old.
I'll take it. Finally, we're going for the 2 to 11 demographic.
Yeah. No ZipRecruiter ads for us.
Yeah.
It'll be baby toys and rattles and
Gerber and Danimals and Oshkosh.
I bet there are podcasts geared to kids.
Oh my gosh. Well, we might have to talk about this off air. We might have our spin-off series. Well, if the In Search Of episode didn't reel them in, nothing will, I would say.
Right.
I say we just do good work, and the 2 to 11-year-olds will find us eventually.
Yeah. Anyways, and the basic concept of the show, am I getting it? It's kind of like a lot of sitcoms from that time. Like, there's a depressing premise underneath.
There is.
A kind of sunny show. I don't know. I guess it got a little more serious as it went along. But Punky's father left, and then at some point her mom abandoned her in a grocery store or something.
I guess, from what I gather, the father just walked out on them.
Yeah.
But the mother took it a step further and actually abandoned her in a public place.
All right. Somewhere in Chicago.
Yeah, so Punky is scarred by this, understandably, and then she's just living on the streets.
Right, and the first season, the opening credits are like one of those cool things where they filmed something for the credits.
Yeah.
Like different strokes.
I enjoy that.
Yeah. And
that opening sequence.
She's like, or you're cross-cutting between her and their lives. And she's like, doing little menial tasks for people to scrounge money. And
she's like carrying groceries to people's car.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of thinking, well, don't they have shopping carts back then? And then like later they show like there's a shopping cart like right in front of the grocery store but like everybody's walking out of these stores with like bags full of groceries in their hands.
Maybe they just don't want to. Just like now, they don't want to have to take the cart back.
Yeah, and I guess they have like a 1-bag limit at this grocery store too. So they don't have enough groceries where they need a cart.
Right.
But Punky's, and I'm sure it's just a cute kid looking to hustle some money. They'll let her take their groceries to the car.
Yeah. So Henry has a photography studio.
Yes.
And he's also the manager of this apartment.
Yeah, that was something that took me a little bit to grasp that.
Yeah, and I guess she was like hiding in a vacant apartment.
Yeah. Now there's something confusing about this here. One thing is that one of the episodes missing from ABC. Apparently the premiere that laid all this out was a 3-part episode, yet they're missing the first part of it.
Yeah. Right. So you watch the second episode, as I did, and they already know each other. She's staying there at least temporarily. Mm-hmm. They've had time for him to take a wacky portrait of them together and develop it. And and then a lot of this other information is just not there.
Yeah, but we know that Henry's really cool.
Yeah.
You know why? One reason is because in that opening sequence, do you like the way he walks out of his studio and like kicks the door closed behind him with his leg?
I don't know if I noticed it, but I do. Just you describing it.
He's got like a really like, I guess it's to show that he's unattached and he's kind of like free, and he's just he's not that he doesn't like his job, but he's like very casual about things. So he walks out and he just kind of looks around him and like does this little thing with his leg behind the door. It's like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and he's wearing a hat too, right?
Yes.
Like a sort of, I don't know what you call that, but like a hat with the brim, but it's kind of bent, like an old man hat.
Yeah, but he's it's just very like casual. And he's in a routine, I guess it shows.
Yeah,
that he doesn't even bother to close the door behind him. He just takes it for granted. He takes many things for granted until he finds Punky.
And he's a widower?
That I don't remember that. I don't know.
I don't know. I get that impression, and there's like a photograph of, like an old photograph of a woman on like the table behind the couch or something. So I kind of got that impression that maybe he's been lonely and that Punky's filling a void for him too. Just
you didn't assume that he was just like taking pictures of people that came into his studio and like keeping them in his apartment.
It could be
doing like a 1-hour photo kind of deal.
He's very lonely.
Yeah, he's probably onto something there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I know
it probably came up in that first episode.
Yeah, probably explain. Yeah, that's one of the first things they would establish.
Yeah.
Because why is he living by himself? I'm sure Brendan Tartikoff had to have them address that.
Right, yeah. Anyway, it is a depressing kind of thing
child abandonment. I mean, that's one of the worst things ever. And, I mean, I guess it works out well for Punky, but it's kind of a sad premise for a show, definitely.
I mean, so one of her main character traits is a sort of self-reliance.
Yes.
And like in that opening, again, you see her climb a fire escape to get into this apartment, and then, using a rope and a tote bag to hoist her dog, Brandon.
Yes.
And I just realized he must be named after Brandon Tartikoff.
Yes, he was indeed. That was...
Because I was the whole time, Brandon? Who would name a dog Brandon?
Yeah. Right. That's that Tartikoff touch.
Yeah. I would name a dog Tartikoff before I'd name it Brandon.
That would be awesome.
That would be a good dog. Here, Tartikoff.
Yeah. Maybe he had to be talked out of that one.
Yeah.
That's originally what Brandon Tartikoff did suggest.
I guess since we're talking about the opening, we should talk about the theme song, too.
How could we not talk about the theme song?
I mean, one, it's, in terms of instrumentation, it's very 80s.
Yes.
Like keyboards.
And the graphics, like the slowly rendered Punky, the show logo and multicolored crayon.
Yeah, kid handwriting.
Yeah.
And I like even, since season 2, they basically got rid of all the cool stuff in the credits except for the song.
You're right, yeah.
And when they show her Soleil Moon Frye's credit, it says up in the corner, Punky.
Yeah, no, it did say that in at least one of the season 1 episodes as well.
No, it does, yeah. But it's scrawled.
Yeah, which is funny, so the kids understand who Punky is.
Right.
I was a little offended by that.
Yeah. And she is not the top billed.
Yeah.
Like George Gaynes.
Right. Well,
of course.
It's coming out in the SARD you're talking about.
Yeah.
He gets top billing.
Yeah. And did you notice who co-wrote and performed this song?
Oh, yes. You're talking about Gary Portnoy?
Yeah. Of Cheers fame.
Yeah.
I was excited to learn that. That was pretty cool.
It's funny how, let me see, how should I put this? It's funny how the same vocalist and writer can seem like sort of warm and inviting and comfortable on Cheers and yet seem like so sappy on Punky Brewster.
Yeah.
When there's not a whole lot of difference between... there's some similarities between the songs, I would say. Some thematic and his voice, he's not exactly, Ozzy Osbourne as a vocalist.
No. It's perfect for the Cheers song, though.
Yeah.
I mean, his voice. And, it's fine here. It's a catchy song.
It is, yes. And it makes you smile, but it's just a little bit more cloying.
Yeah.
The way he's singing this one than it is the Cheers one, definitely.
Right.
He's doing something.
And do you know the other big theme song he co-wrote?
Let's see.
He didn't perform the third one.
Cheers, Punky Brewster. Was it not Family Ties?
No.
Okay, I give up.
Mr. Belvedere.
Mr. Belvedere.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that.
And his songwriting partner on all three was the same woman. And then I spent some time at his website trying to, and there's this like giant biography like telling his entire life. I mean, it's bigger than the George Gaynes biography.
Wow.
Just every stage of him trying to get a career and then making this sort of left turn into TV theme songs for a little bit.
Huh.
And I think both the Punky Brewster and Mr. Belvedere songs were rewrites of songs they had written for pilots that didn't get made.
Interesting. Did not know
that.
And
then I think the Mr. Belvedere was a rewrite of a theme song they wrote for a show that later got made. And then they wrote a new theme song for that. Huh. And that's a weird one where like Michael Richards plays, like it's part like a sort of upstairs downstairs thing where he and some other people are, the servants and causing trouble for the rich people, which I've seen like, I think I saw a promo for that on YouTube or something.
And what was the Punky Brewster was a remake of what? A rewrite of the Bionic Woman or what?
Yeah. Something that didn't get made.
Okay.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, an interesting song,
Yeah.
You may be smiling. And, I mean, how can you not smile when that song comes on and the instrumentation?
Yeah.
Maybe the world is blind. It's tough. It's tough to be grumpy.
Every time you turn around.
Yeah, much like it's tough for Henry to stay grumpy when Punky's around. It's tough for me to stay grumpy when I'm hearing that song.
That's a good point, yeah. And then I noticed some of the incidental music, at least in the second season, was done by the guys that wrote the Silver Spoon song.
Ah, interesting.
The Rick Worth and Bob something.
So this... Bob Sacamano?
Yeah. Bob Worth and Rick Howard.
Ah, yeah.
Rick with a K and no C. Yeah.
So this David Duclon empire.
Yeah.
The guy knew what he was doing.
He did, yeah.
You know, it's funny, like, if this kind of show were made today, it still wouldn't be on too long because the kids would age out of it, but it would have like a huge run on like Disney Channel or something like that, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it definitely felt like kind of like Silver Spoons did, like one of those shows. Other than the sort of grunginess of it, there's just a general
of Punky.
Yeah, I mean, other than her finding a foster parent very quickly, like it doesn't have the fantasy part that a lot of those shows have.
You know, it's interesting you said because one of the episodes that just struck me. And maybe it was just this episode, but just kind of like how flat everything, the lighting was, and very just generic look to it. I mean, and maybe part of it's because it's a lot of it was indoors, but I was thinking how it's not cinematic at all. I mean, not that you'd expect it, but it's very, even for a television sitcom, it seemed very routine. Yeah. As far as the production, it's like, okay, the production design will make bright colors in Punky's room, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. Like I feel like maybe that's one of the reasons another reason I didn't watch it. That there's something, because that apartment, it looks like just an old apartment.
Yeah.
And, there are other shows that look a little bit like that. Of course, like, All in the Family has a little bit of that. But
right. But compared to like Silver Spoons or Facts of Life even.
Yeah.
Where they had these big sets, these big open sets that look like inviting living places. And that's a good point.
Yeah, this is like a one-bedroom apartment. I think her room is like his study or something.
Yeah, she turns it into her room.
Yeah, which is very bright and painted.
Yes.
All sorts of.
Yeah, well, so should we get into like these specific... We watched a couple of episodes. I think one was far superior to the other.
Yes.
But here's the other thing is, like, when I was reading up a little bit on Punky Brewster and kind of refreshing my memory about things and filling in gaps, because, like I said, I didn't watch it very much. It's funny how much contradictory information I saw out there. Like, you'd see somebody say, well, Punky didn't delve into serious issues a lot, so this was an exception. But yet, a lot of people seem to remember the show for being, like, a very special episode, like one after another. I think that's like the majority of people that watched it. That's kind of what stands out as like the very special episodes.
Like I read that it did more of that after the first season and address things like the Challenger and like the one we're going to talk about, which is in a way a pretty heavy subject and drugs and I guess she was a part of like a lot of this Just Say No campaigns. The actress was and stuff. And
now, to me, I clearly wasn't that big a fan of the show because I didn't remember a lot of those episodes. Yeah. I mean, now it's like, oh yeah, they did an episode about that, but like, we're different strokes.
Right.
I would say, okay, that was one very special episode after another. I wouldn't have associated that with Punky Brewster, but a lot of people, some of these stuck in their mind. One thing I want to mention I thought was interesting. This is something I didn't know either. I was surprised looking at the episodes that were available, how many were like 2 episodes in one episode, and apparently that was by design. With the reason being you do like these 2 15-minute segments. And if football ran long, which it often did, instead of just preempting the whole show, the notion was if the game went like 15 minutes long, they could squeeze in like they'd show one episode, or maybe not, they wouldn't have it timed at that exactly maybe, but what they would do is if football went long, they'd show half of a Punky Brewster so that the kids would get that before they'd go into like the 8 o'clock show or whatever.
It's like a cartoon.
Yeah. So if you see like many of those episodes in the first season, especially, there'd be like there's 2 different stories in the same show.
Weird.
Now the ones we talked about are quote unquote full length episodes, but they did that regularly, and it was by design.
And there was one that we wanted to talk about that's not on there.
Yeah.
That had like 2 titles like that.
Yeah.
But it seemed like that still might have been a 2-part in one or something.
It may have been, and actually in at the end of season 2, there's like a 5-part episode. Which is 5 half-hour episodes where they, I guess, set up the relaunching of Punky.
Yeah.
Which...
Henry dies.
Well, Henry doesn't die, but where Punky starts her own restaurant backed by Henry.
What?
Yes, in the syndicated years, they started a place called Punky's Place. Henry was like disillusioned by the photography studio business. And the funny thing is, like, I watched an episode from that because I was curious about that. And Punky is actually, like, running the business as far as you can tell. Like, Henry's not even in the episode. and Punky and her friend is like the main chef, and Punky's like the server. And I don't know how they're handling all the other stuff, but
Henry's in the back handling the taxes.
Yeah, it's the most bizarre thing, like, because it was Punky's dream to open up her own restaurant. So it's like, okay, well, this kid's like 11 or 12 by now. Yeah, why not? Let's indulge the kid. With the money I made from selling the studio, I'll let Punky open up her own restaurant
Weird.
where she can hang out. Why not? Okay.
Well, it probably gave him a bigger set.
Yeah, it did. But anyways,
yeah.
I found that interesting about the two halves, and I wasn't aware of that at all. But
that's kind of smart in a way.
Yeah, it was an interesting strategy.
Yeah.
So they moved it. So most of the time it was on 7 and 7:30. It looks like they moved it a little bit, but I guess it started out. They paired it with Silver Spoons, like as a 7 o'clock in that 7 o'clock hour, and I guess they gave Punky a little bit of that buffer for football going over.
Yeah, let's. I guess talk about the better episode first.
Yeah, we did a lighter episode and then a more serious episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lighter episode was from season 1, and it was on October 21st, 1984 it premiered. Called Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Wow, that's even closer to the time of the events than I thought it would be.
Yes, and as I was curious about this, I was very interested in the date because it involves actual footage from the National League Championship Series.
Yeah.
And they shot on location at Wrigley Field, some scenes and stuff.
Yeah, there's one scene you actually see like people gawking at them.
Yeah, so it would have been probably just after the World Series. It was 2 weeks after the playoff games that they were showed here. Wow. Well, yeah. So in the actual series, the Cubs
lost.
They played the first 2 games at Wrigley, then went to San Diego for the last 3 games, and then they had the World Series, and the Padres lost to the Detroit Tigers.
Right.
So they were playoff games at Wrigley Field that year, which was a big thing. It was a big part of the story. But it's very interesting. I'm curious as to how they conceived of this story, like how fast, like when they knew the Cubs would be in the playoffs and that they could actually put this together so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, my memory is NBC covering those games.
Yeah. NBC had the I think they had the World Series too, but they definitely had the Cubs-Padres series. So they had that footage, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
And the show revolves around Henry's efforts to get tickets to take him and Punky to a baseball game, to a playoff game at Wrigley Field, which is a huge deal because the Cubs hadn't been in that situation in 40 years, and they hadn't won a World Series since, like 1908.
Right. And he's definitely been waiting since that last playoff appearance.
Well,
he makes mention of that. And we do get an idea of his age.
Well, this is interesting, yes.
A pretty good idea.
I was gobsmacked by this.
Yes.
The episode portrays Henry as some kind of Z-League-like figure who apparently is present at these moments in baseball history, although his connection to Ernie Banks is not as strong as I thought it was at first.
No.
But, yeah, so they basically place... Henry claims to have been directly involved in one of the most famous moments in baseball history. Which
I'll let you.
Well, it involves former BOTNS star Babe Ruth, actually.
That's right. There are a lot of connections in this episode.
Yeah.
To Voyagers. We've already mentioned 2, and there's one more. But
yeah. So in 1932, the Cubs were in the World Series like after the last year of the war. They're like in the mid 40s. But before that, they were in the World Series against the Yankees, and I think it was 1932. And the legend has it that Babe Ruth called his shot.
Right.
And he hit a home run off Cubs pitcher Charlie Root, and before he pointed to center field and then hit a home run and ran around the bases, laughing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there's controversy to this day. Many people disagree. But Henry tells Punky, when he's talking about the long history of the Cubs losing, I mean, he's established that he had season tickets every year, but this was the year he decided to save himself the expense, save himself the heartbreak, and not get the season tickets. So he didn't renew them, and then what happens?
He got hit on the head.
Well, actually, I mean, like in
the Cubs get in the playoffs.
Yeah, so he's heartbroken about that.
Yeah.
So he's telling Punky about his whole history. But yes, so he was at the game, he says, in 1932. And not only did he see the called shot, but he got hit in the head by it.
Yeah.
And he shows Punky, he claims to still have like a scar from it.
Right. So when he told that, I wrote down the note, Henry is old. And then I looked up George Gaynes, and I think Henry is probably younger than George Gaynes.
Yeah, well, George Gaynes...
He was born in 1917.
Yeah, he lived to be like in his
99,
late 90s,
I
right?
think.
Okay, 1917?
Yeah.
And... This was like 84. So he was 67.
And when he tells the story, he says he was about Punky's age, which is like 7, I think.
Yes. I think she's 7 when it starts.
So he's playing... And so that game would have been 52 years before.
Yes.
1932, yeah.
So he'd be like 59 or so.
Right.
Even if you give it a couple of years, he's still playing younger than... Wow, that's interesting.
And I'm like, he's not that old.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess it makes sense that he's not retired or something, too.
And part of that was me writing it down and not quite remembering when Baby Ruth's career, all the dates there.
Yeah.
So,
well, they play up Henry's age, like especially at the beginning. Like I think it's said that he being alone and more importantly old, that he's not a good foster parent candidate and everything.
Right.
So yeah, that's an interesting part of it. But so do you think Henry's telling the truth about being at this famous game and part of this moment and getting hit in the head with the actual ball?
I think maybe he was at the game.
Yeah.
Maybe not getting hit in the head with the ball.
Maybe he was hit in the head with something else, and he woke up and thought that he was the home run.
That could be.
Like, maybe he's not really Henry Warnemont at all. Maybe he's been living with amnesia for 50-some years.
Maybe he's Commandant Lassard.
Yeah, he's living under another identity.
One could argue that Commandant Lassard had been hit in the head with something.
Yes, one could argue that convincingly. I'm intrigued by this idea that, like, Henry remade himself at 7 years old after being hit with a foul and just somehow managed to reshape his life into a totally different persona.
Right.
Like, all that life he had for 7 years, he threw that out and started over.
Yeah.
Started fresh. Much like Punky did when she met Henry.
Yeah, maybe they have some bond that he doesn't even know about.
Yeah. They could be actually distant relations, and he just doesn't know.
And his first two choices were to develop a voice, a distinctive voice.
Yes.
And to never cut his eyebrows.
Yeah. Because when he was 5, he had this real high-pitched, squeaky, you know, and talked very fast.
Right.
And he trimmed his eyebrows every single day. Mm-hmm. But after he gets hit with Babe Ruth or whatever he got hit with, it's like, nope.
Right. And he's blonde, and I feel like maybe he realized, trimming your eyebrows is not a good idea when you're blonde, because then you look like Dick Gephardt, and people think you don't have eyebrows. Was
Dick Gephardt ever on Punky Brewster?
I don't think so.
I guess it would have been before he was running for president, but
he was on. Was he on? I feel like he was on some sitcom.
Yeah, he must have been.
He just, hey, Punky or whatever.
Yeah,
really stiff. And,
hey, aren't you Senator Dick Gephardt from Missouri or whatever he's?
Yeah.
That's right. The same one who ran for president 4 years ago.
He ran in 84 or 88?
It was one of the two. I'm not
I think it was 88.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get our crack research team on that.
Right.
Dick Gephardt.
Right. Anyway, Henry doesn't have tickets, and he wants tickets.
Yeah, he tried to get tickets, but it was a big mob scene. And again, this was a really big deal. I mean, now, like, our age, we can remember, like, the Cubs were lovable losers and synonymous with failure for year after year.
Right.
Supposedly there was a curse of a billy goat to explain why they lost every year. They had some near misses, they never made it, et cetera, et cetera.
Is there something with a piano? Wait, no, that's...
Yeah. Let's not get that. So this was a huge deal in 1984. Now the Cubs they have all the money in the world. They're got one of the best teams in baseball, and they've won a World Series, and they're going to be perennial playoff contenders. Right. So it's going to be harder to get them. But this was back in the old days when it was a big deal when Wrigley Field didn't have night games at the time in 1984, right. And it was like, okay, this has been years and years, decades of losing, and finally we've got a really good team, and they did have a really good team.
Yeah.
So It's understandable that the whole town would be buzzing, and it's a playoff game, and Wrigley Field is not like 100,000 people's stadium, so it would be hard to get tickets, as Henry found out when he tried to walk down to the box office.
Yeah.
You know, he had to actually buy tickets in those days in person.
Right, and he was there, like, way early, and apparently other people were there 2 hours earlier than he was.
Yeah, it was something like he was there 18 hours, and they were 19 hours or something like that. Yeah.
And he just missed out on tickets, and then he got used as a battering ram.
Yeah.
And it's one of those great sitcom things where he just walks in and his clothes are all disarrayed.
Disheveled, yes, exactly. But he's disappointed, so he's trying everything he can do, to get tickets, and he he tells Punky that he's got a connection to Ernie Banks.
Right.
They're best friends. When it turns out he shot his Ernie Banks' second cousin's wedding.
Right, and told him where the dip was.
Yeah, the crab dip.
Yeah.
And
was it?
Or clam
dip. Yeah, it was weird. Like clam dip. Ugh.
Yeah. So he actually gets a hold of Ernie Banks on the phone and doesn't get anywhere. Ernie Banks hangs up on him.
Right.
Despite trying to play his friendship card. For a minute I was thinking, wow, he's actually is friends with Ernie Banks because he says it kind of, oh, that's right. How did I forget? I'm best friends with Ernie Banks practically. Ernie Banks, who, Mr. Cub and a Hall of Famer, one of the best players of all time, hit over 500 home runs. And yes, for our non-baseball fans out there, it's a big deal to know Ernie Banks.
Yeah. I do want to mention the other Voyagers connection, which is Punky and her friend Cherry are dressing up for Halloween, or pre-dressing for Halloween.
Yes.
Punky dresses as Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And Cherry dresses as Cleopatra.
Yes. Good
Cleopatra and the Babe play parts in this.
Yes. Nicely done there, Mike.
And her grandmother, Betty.
Cherry's...
is there taking care of him. And then Henry comes in and tells a story and everything. And they're leaving, and Betty says, I hate to see a grown man cry. And then Cherry says, I don't. It's weird. It's like she's into Henry.
Like a crush kind of situation.
Yes.
I didn't really pick
up on that. It was a weird line. I don't know what it was. Maybe she was just being in Cleopatra character.
That's what I kind of thought, but I guess, well, gonna have to check that. I don't remember there ever being a suggestion of any kind of crush in the series.
Weird.
God, I hope not.
No. I mean, she did. I watched a clip of that show, the one we wanted to watch, which featured Andy Gibb, and she did make eyes at him. But I mean,
well, who didn't?
So did Punky. Yeah. In fact, so did Henry.
Yeah.
This clip is...
I really want to see this episode now.
Andy Gibb is like Punky's piano teacher, and then he plays a song and sings, and like Henry is in the kitchen and he pushes open the the little whatever you call it, the shutters or whatever in between, and it's just like kind of watching.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Sadly, not available, presumably due to some kind of music rights.
Yeah. But I think he's singing an Andy Gibb song.
Yeah. George Gaynes is singing an Andy Gibb song?
No, Andy Gibb is singing an Andy Gibb song.
Man, okay.
The character, as
that's
if
a relief.
The character wrote it. But George Gaynes did Broadway musicals and things.
I could believe that.
I don't know,
but he's got
what an Andy Gibb song would sound like in that voice, but
George Gaynes singing I Just Want to Be Your Everything or Shadow Dancing.
Yeah, I don't know my Andy Gibb song.
It's pretty...
Stay alive! I don't know.
Okay, so back to the Warnemann's apartment.
Yes.
And, well, I guess there's another... Should we mention the other way they try to get tickets before they actually do is there's a radio contest.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a radio contest, and there's a trivia component, and they ask, what the windiest city in the country is, and he assumes it's Chicago.
Right.
Which, not an unreasonable guess, but Punky knows it's Great Falls, Montana.
Yeah.
And
he doesn't listen to her.
Yeah, he brushes her off and gets it wrong when he could have won tickets to the game. And I like that we bring this up because it gives us a chance to mention that the great Eddie Deezen was also a semi-regular on the show. Is the building's inept maintenance man.
Right.
So he comes up and he trash talks Henry for not knowing Great Falls, Montana, and getting the question wrong.
Yeah.
Which makes Henry mad because Henry has some kind of, him having authority in the building was something I didn't realize at first, and that makes more sense because he's got this kind of nasty. He trades barbs with Eddie Deezen. Yeah. Sometimes. Well, and he's basically incompetent, but I guess Henry's too good-hearted to really.
Well, and I think Eddie Deezen is related to the owner of the building.
Oh, well, that would make even more sense.
Yeah. Much, kind of Mr. Furley kind of situation.
Yeah. So, I'd totally forgotten that Eddie Deezen was on.
Yeah, I don't think I knew.
Yeah. And folks, you'll recognize Eddie Deezen when you see him. He was in many things around this time and playing a certain kind of character. I'm
surprised he wasn't in Police Academy. Maybe he was.
Maybe in one of he must have shown up in at least one of those, you'd think.
He must have. But he does hook. Actually, he hooks him up with a scalper who I believe was in some of the Police Academy movies.
Yes, that's right. No. Another great performer, the great Art Matrano.
Art Matrano.
Okay, that's enough for music rights. So, yes, Art Matrano, of course, famous for the bit where he do the magic tricks and hum that or sing that Fine and Dandy song, which is a real song, during his routine. And he does not do that here, but he makes an impression as Lenny the Loop.
Lenny the Loop.
This scalper who's got tickets to everything.
He does.
Do you remember some of the things he mentions?
I do. A Rod Stewart concert.
Surely a big seller.
And possibly another bit of BOT-esque crossover. The King Tut exhibit.
Yeah.
Chicago. If you remember from way back, our first episode.
Yes, our premiere episode.
The Incredible Hulk, the plane was on the way to Chicago with King Tut artifacts.
Yeah, and is that the one that he says he took a bath on that one? Or he makes some comment about how...
Yeah, I think so.
How he didn't make any money on those tickets. And I was like, was that a flop? I didn't think it was. I didn't quite get that. But
Or that might be the last one. So he also has tickets to the Jacksons Victory Tour, the Super Bowl, Kentucky Derby, and synchronized swimming.
No, that one doesn't quite fit in, does it?
No.
Although, in 1984...
I think that one he just throws over his shoulder.
Yeah. In 1984, this is the U.S.'s big Olympic year in Los Angeles.
That's right, yeah.
He probably did pretty well at synchronized swimming. I'm surprised he didn't do well on that.
These are some very topical jokes.
Yeah.
Like Rod Stewart seems almost like the least...
Yeah.
Well, Super Bowl and Kentucky Derby, but
Well, it's interesting to mention Rod Stewart and the Jacksons tour in the same, like, you've got two concerts, and it just seems like, well, the Jacksons would have covered the music aspect.
Right.
The Victory Tour. And he's got everything, like, in a trench coat. He's, like, opening his trench coat to reveal all this, his ill-gotten tickets.
And he has 2 Cubs tickets, and he wants like $1,000.
Yeah, it's like $900 or $950. It's just under $1,000. Yep.
Punky tries to like pretend that she's dying. He doesn't buy that. But what they end up getting for like $100 or something.
Yeah, and Punky's actually trying to tell Henry just take one ticket. You know, Henry. She's being noble about it.
Right. She's got a whole lifetime to go to a Cubs playoff game.
You would say it would be ridiculous to suggest that she go by herself, but she probably, is capable. She lived by herself for a couple of years, so she could easily have gone to the game by herself, but they talk him down. So he's a scalper with a heart of gold, apparently.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out later.
There's a good reason he's got a... He's able to haggle a little bit in these tickets.
Yeah. And then we get them, going to the game, and we get a very 80s instrumental take on Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Again, like a lot of synthesizers. I think some, like, pitch wheel action on the synthesizer.
And yeah, now don't they eventually weave in or segue into the Punky theme song, or is that a separate montage?
They might.
Because I seem to remember, I know at the baseball stadium they kind of work in like some strains of the dee 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 dee, and so they're doing that as well. But yeah, the 80s take on Take Me Out to the Ball Game is great. And you got, it's nice, they're actually walking around some real footage, and he's got Punky on his shoulders, and they're at Wrigley Field, one of the historic ballparks in Major League Baseball.
That's right, yeah.
Not just anybody could go shoot in there,
No. Except for, of course, in the close-up scenes, and they're on a set with some people. And they get to their seats, and there are some nuns in their seats, 2 nuns, and they find their tickets are from 1884.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the ticket taker, he wasn't doing a good job.
Yeah.
He didn't notice that.
Yeah, and I guess there was an usher that pointed them that it said, hey, there's 2 nuns already in your seats, but they're right down that way. You go sort it out with them.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and veteran character actor Mary Wicks is one of the nuns, who was in a lot of shows in a lot of the Lucy shows, and had a long career in movies and television.
Apparently he played a nun in the Whoopi Goldberg movie. Yes,
and she might have been a nun in a couple of other things too. Probably. But she's very brassy, and her friend with her is more gentle and younger.
Yes.
Whereas Mary Wicks is kind of like the old. Wow, I'm not giving up my seat.
Right. Yeah. And then the younger one offers to let Punky sit on her lap.
Yeah, I think wasn't she like actually she offered to give them their seats actually.
She tried that too,
which is very
very nun,
very benevolent of her.
Yeah.
I mean, They say they got those tickets from the Cardinals office.
That's right.
Not the St. Louis Cardinals office.
They say they wouldn't be giving out.
Yeah.
They hate the Cubs.
Yeah. Well, maybe they did give them fake tickets. Maybe they both had fake tickets.
Yeah.
And the real ones didn't show up.
And there's also like this big dude behind them who almost gets into it with Henry.
Yeah. Henry backs down from him.
Yeah.
Probably only because Punky was there. If Punky wasn't there, Henry would have totally decked the guy, I think.
Right.
The loudmouth.
Yeah.
But, he didn't want to get into a fight in front of his 7-year-old young charge.
I looked him up. His name's Brad Logan. I didn't see anything like really recognizable from him.
I didn't really recognize him either.
Younger nun, Bonnie Urseth was on some show called We've Got It Made.
Yes,
where
with Terry Copley.
Yeah, like two guys hire like a really beautiful woman to be their maid.
Yeah, living the dream.
And she was one of the girlfriends, and then I guess that's another one that kind of went into syndication.
Yes.
And they got rid of the girl.
Do you remember the theme song to that show?
I don't remember that show at all.
I do, but we'll save it for the playlist.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. It was very distinctive. I think that's the only thing I really remember. Well, I remember Terry Copley. But is the theme song.
Yeah.
Was very, like, peppy.
Okay.
It was like, ba-ba-da-ba, we've got it made. I think it was pretty much that for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm really glad they said we got it made in it.
Yeah. Well, they had to address that right off the bat. That, like, these guys, you're not going to be able to complain about a lot because you got away with this.
But is it, the title is clearly a pun on having a maid, and yet they spelled it
M-A-D.
correctly. Yeah.
Wait a minute, you know what? I don't think I got the pun until you just brought it up. Whoa. I know I watched some of that, which shows you, as we've talked about, how much of an NBC guy I was.
Yeah.
That I watched stuff like We've Got It Made, and yet there's, there's whole years of Magnum PI I didn't even know it was on, basically. So, yeah, she definitely it must have been other stuff, too, because she's very familiar with the younger.
Yeah, I think she had a lot of guest star roles.
Yeah, I think playing moms and, nicer PTA types.
Right. But you know what? This is Punky Brewster, and it all works out.
Yeah, it does. Punky manages to get them even a little bit of an upgrade on their seats.
Yeah. Of course, she runs off in the middle of the stadium, which is not a good idea.
Which, you got a nice seat there, somebody being nice to you, and you go take off. She's got Punky Power.
Well, Henry didn't get a seat, so.
Yeah, Henry's just wandering around.
Yeah, and then he's worried about her. And, and that during that, you can see more footage of them at Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
She got them seats in the dugout, in the Cubs dugout.
Yeah, she's like all casual about it. Like she met some friends that, offered to let them sit with them, and turns out it's in the Cubs dugout. So they just watch the rest of the game, and then, Henry like looks at her like, hey, well done,
Yeah.
Why not? They're clowning around in the dugout.
And maybe, I guess intentionally, they're ambiguous about the results of the game.
Yeah. Now, in real life, they won the first 2 games at Wrigley, and then they lost. They blew a 2-0 lead, I believe, and lost. It was best of 5 then, and they lost the last 3 games at San Diego, I think. So they would have won this one, but
yeah. And cause I thought, in the show, they made it sound like this was the deciding game.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that, but if they did, they were wrong.
Yeah. Of course, America would have known by October or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't make it, but
again, they could have shot multiple endings.
Yes.
One where they lose, one where they win, one where Henry gets hit in the head again with a foul ball this time. And goes screaming into the dugout. That'd be good. And then he turns back, reverts to his persona he was before he was 7.
Why do I have these eyebrows?
Yeah. His voice is all different. Like, Henry, clearly you reverted back to what your persona was like before you got hit with a home run when you were 7 years old.
Who are you? Then he turns into James Mason.
Yeah. And then the only way they could get him back would be to hit him in the head with a baseball again. So that would be a way you get an actual speaking role for like Ryan Sandberg or somebody like Mr. Sandberg, like hey Punky, my Henry needs help. He needs sure, I'll do whatever I can. Should I get a doctor?
And maybe like another Cubs player could be like Leon Durham, like roll his eyes or something.
I like the fact that Leon Durham is involved at all.
That's the only other one I can remember.
Yeah. Well, they had. I think they showed some. They had some footage of like the Cubs players warming up, and I think Rick Sutcliffe like goes for a bunt and almost gets hit in the crotch with a ball, or bunts it into himself or something like that. And there's a real quick shot there, but
were the players in the dugout actual players? Could you tell?
Yeah, I didn't I am not sure who the one that was. There's one prominent mustachioed guy, but in 1984, a lot of players had mustaches, so I wasn't sure who that was. But there were some real players in there. I think Bob Denier might have been one. I don't remember seeing Ryan Sandberg, like some of the real superstars there, but I bet he would have been happy to try to foul a ball off Henry's head. If they asked him to.
I would like to see Harry Carey make it. Cameo.
I hadn't even considered that.
I mean, I guess he wasn't announcing the game, but maybe on radio or something.
Maybe he could have been on radio. Yeah. I think he would have.
But I'm sure he was there. I bet he still did the seventh inning stretch.
Take me out to the ball game. You think he did it like to an '80s version?
I would like to see that.
They play like they.
He has a Casio keyboard and he hits a button. And sounds along to it. Or the organist, I guess, could do that, but
and then just he'd like pepper it with like, "This is gonna be totally awesome," and get all these '80s buzzwords in,
right?
Like in between lines of the song. Tubular. Well, unfortunately, we didn't get that, but
it wasn't. It was a pretty entertaining episode.
It was. I enjoyed the baseball theme and the fact that they mentioned the called shot. It really. This becomes instantly my favorite Punky Brewster episode, I think.
And it definitely helped, at least for us as adults, I guess, that George Gaynes got to be funny.
Yeah. We enjoy George Gaynes' performance in this.
Yes.
The twinkle in his eye when he says many things.
Right.
Okay, now should we go on to the next episode?
Yeah.
Urban Fear.
Right.
From season 2.
Yeah.
This premiered January 5th, 1986.
So there were some changes besides the credits and them just having shots from the show. Mm-hmm. Betty and Cherry are now regular cast members, and they've added T.K. Carter as Punky's teacher.
The great T.K.
No.
He might be, but I'm not going to. I got to be stingier with that.
Yeah. Who, honestly, I mostly remember from The Corner.
Yeah,
he's great in that.
Which is funny because, like, I remember T.K. Carter he's the kind of guy, like, I imagine I don't know this for a fact, but there's probably, like, 10 sitcoms with him in it where you just see, like, him turning around to the camera and T.K. Carter as something, A bit of a journeyman, I would think, but, so he's like a teacher.
Yes, Mike, the teacher.
Which they tried to launch a spinoff at the end of the first season, apparently, right?
About the foster home or something? Yeah.
And then they brought him over. They said, well, we're not going to do the spinoff, but we're going to keep T.K. Carter. We're going to be in the T.K. Carter business.
Yeah. How could he not be?
Exactly. So this episode has a very unusual setup and premise.
Yeah.
They're trying to get across, like, fear and the notion of, sort of things that would terrorize kids and I guess it's sort of a way to address this and talk to kids that were watching and kind of put their fears at ease, but the whole thing is bizarre.
It is, and I mean, like, some of it is Punky's particular fear of abandonment.
Right. Which
seems like a legit issue based on the setup of the entire series, that she would be worried about that.
Right.
But it is pretty, it's bizarre and a little heavy. I mean, I think it's real kinds of fears that kids probably have if they see the news and they see things going on.
Perhaps it's a little self-referential. The grown-ups are like, they put on the news, and the news is about like this stalker that's terrorizing the streets of Chicago and killing people. And they're very explicit for this kind of show about, they're not saying that they're menacing, they actually say that he's killing people.
Yeah.
And Henry tells the kids to go to and he says it's not appropriate viewing for kids, but it's like, well, kids are watching this show right now.
Yeah.
And maybe the point is, well, because Henry sort of deals with things throughout the course of the episode, but maybe the idea is like, oh, you don't send your kids to the room and you talk to kids about this and stuff, but I'm not so sure I agree with that.
I don't know, but I mean, the Betty's like, well, they already know.
Yeah. Well, see, I think you have the grown-ups talk to the kids about it, but you don't necessarily have them sit and watch a 6 o'clock news report.
Right.
With the graphic details of these grisly killings.
And they do, like, the news, they do the standard but usually amusing joke of like having them say something serious and then cut or segue to like a ridiculous story.
Right, or like some innocuous thing. Exactly, and that's played for laughs on the show Punky Brewster.
Yeah,
this weird juxtaposition of comedy with this really unsettling theme.
Right, and Punky and Cherry are like in the bedroom talking about it, and they have the newspaper with the drawing. They're like 2 jokes about the guy looking like David Letterman.
Yes,
that drawing doesn't look like David Letterman. It
doesn't look anything like. Yeah, I think it's the grandmother. She says it.
Yeah, and then Cherry says it like after the commercial break.
Oh, I always thought he looked like David Letterman.
Like, how does Cherry know what David Letterman? Why is she up? I don't know about this grandmother.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a fascinating thing, like this dig at David Letterman.
Yeah. And yet it's NBC, so it's them getting in the name of one of their people too.
Yeah, I'd like to think that Letterman picked up on that and started like a thing about it for like a week.
Yeah,
like making jokes cracks about Punky Brewster.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And like just making a thing, being offended by that.
It's like, listen, Paul.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was watching the Punky Brewster.
Oh yeah, Punky. Yeah. Yeah.
They said this killer looked like me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, Punky Brewster, folks.
Punky Brewster.
On NBC.
number 3 network. Yeah.
I hope that happened. It is very bizarre. The guy looks nothing. I mean, here's what you could imagine if there was like a gap, like it had a gap in his teeth or something like that. Instead it's just like this generic drawing that looks like this nondescript guy.
With like a Mo Howard haircut.
Yeah. The Letterman things just seem like some random joke, which is actually kind of cool. I mean, I like the fact that they put that random joke in, but it's really weird.
Yeah.
Another odd aspect of this episode.
Yes. And Punky gets freaked out.
Yeah, and it turns out she's more afraid for Henry than she is for herself.
Yeah,
I mean, she's got Punky Power. She can take care of herself in a scrap.
And part of that is when like Henry explains, well, this guy only kills adults.
Yeah. Don't worry, Punky. He only goes after grown-ups.
And then that like sets the wheels turning, and
so Henry's not all that. I mean, he's basically telling her. He kind of says, "Oh, it'll be fine. You'll be okay. Get over it." And he's sort of addressing it, but not addressing it in a really. It's bizarre the way he goes about it, and I know the idea is that he'll learn a lesson from it about.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the show, right? Is like he's never been a parent.
Yeah.
So he's got to learn.
Right.
Too, like he's learning about how to address these things. You expect that to come up. So
he has these conversations with her, and because he needs to go into work, I guess is the big thing they have, right?
Right.
He has to go. He's got a photography emergency of some kind.
Yeah.
And has to go into work, and she's afraid that he'll get killed.
Yeah.
It just seems to be a reasonable fear.
Yeah.
When the whole city's got this like Son of Sam situation going on, and he's being all casual about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not sure. Then again, I'm not sure. Is their apartment over the studio?
No, I don't think so. I mean, based on the credits, it's somewhere like he has to walk.
Okay. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. So he's leaving. Yeah. Okay. So
I think the stalker is targeting like their area.
Yeah. Okay. They do. Yeah, they do say something like that like it's within their north side or something they specifically mentioned.
Right.
They have some kind of.
And somewhere in there, Henry goes and talks to, or Mike called Henry into school.
Yeah. Oh, because...
we did get it. There like before Henry arrives, Mike is grading papers, and someone asked about... the question was like, what were the most significant battles of the Civil War?
Oh,
and the student said the Battle of the Network Stars.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, and then like some question about the generals, and they mentioned who's like... Is it Heather Locklear? Or?
Heather Locklear, and I actually took pictures to do something with. And Adrienne Barbeau.
Yes. It was a nice little pre-shout-out to us, I think.
Yeah.
So he's concerned because Punky drew this picture, a graphic picture.
Yes, it's in her inimitable crayon style. Mm-hmm. You have, I believe, on the left-hand side of the page, Punky pointing and saying, "Henry, look out."
Yeah.
You have Henry standing facing her.
Yeah.
And then behind Henry, there's a guy with a knife raised about to stab him in the back.
Yeah, yeah. A little disturbing.
Yes.
And, they say that kids that draw those pictures have some kind of issue going on.
Yeah.
Especially if they were told to draw like a rainbow or a nature scene and she draws that. I don't. So, yeah, so he calls Henry in and Mike gives him a lot of schooling about, how he should handle this.
Right. I don't remember how it would.
I mean,
what was the advice?
He's basically telling him, he's kind of telling him just sit down and talk to her, like not avoid it, talk to her, understand her fears and everything like that. And like, I think he's basically telling him to confront it instead of trying to like put it under the rug, or I forget what he says, but because Henry's approach was more just buck up or something like that, and just don't worry about it. And Henry didn't realize.
Buck up.
I guess he didn't. Yes, he didn't really empathize with her.
Yeah,
and wasn't really seeing it from her standpoint. So it's kind of an eye-opening chat.
Yeah.
But I mean, here's the thing: it's still weird to me because there's still a killer on the loose. I mean, I'm not really sure what the right approach should be here.
Right.
But he's basically saying, look, we can't live in fear forever.
Right.
But we shouldn't ignore fear either.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what would.
This is why it's kind of a muddled message, I think.
Yeah. And they do, like, at the end, they catch him, right?
Yes, they do have an announcement. And
like
then because they do another, like, comic segue into, like, the weather or something like that, I think, on the news.
Yeah, or something about a squirrel or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those very special episodes that isn't all that special.
No.
I mean, it's not all that... there's just not a lot of humor to get from this, I don't think.
No. Like, if there had been a wacky scene where the killer was chasing Henry and, like, slipped on a banana peel or something. Or, like, Punky... Because at one point, when she's afraid, Henry goes into her bedroom and sets off all these, like, traps.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So if she could, had, like, Home Alone the killer and caught him.
Yeah. They didn't quite go that far.
They didn't.
It's like they don't have any real actual menace in the show, but they've got this weird dark cloud hanging over the whole episode.
Yeah.
It was well intentioned, but yeah, it didn't really work for me.
No. And really nobody got to be funny.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, Henry just seems kind of clueless the whole time, and
yeah,
there's not much going on. I mean, the Letterman references are really the only jokes I remember from the whole episode.
Pretty much.
Not up to the usual impeccable standards of Punky Brewster, I'm sad to say. Yeah. Where does this one rank in your list of favorite Punky Brewster episodes?
Well, I can only remember 3, and this would be at the bottom.
Okay.
Or 3.5, because I saw the clip from the Andy Gibb.
Yeah.
I would still put the baseball one at the top, then the Andy Gibb, and then the second episode.
That seems like a good list, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue with that.
Right. And then this, yeah. Oh, there was another, like, potential crossover with another medium.
Oh, really?
At one point, somebody said, everybody in Chicago is running scared. And I believe the movie Running Scared was set in Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to think that Billy Crystal and
Gregory
Hines were responsible for catching this guy.
for catching
the stalker, yeah. Henry says they have 300 detectives on it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a little bit of hyperbole. They probably do have a lot.
Well, the Chicago's finest, I'm sure, was out in full force.
Right. Sean Connery.
Yeah. Kevin Costner.
Andy Garcia, Billy Crystal, Gregory Hines.
Robert Stack.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've got a lot more to say about Urban Fear.
No, I don't either.
Are there any other episodes that I guess you didn't really watch the show?
No. Yeah, I mean, I read a bunch of descriptions. I didn't even, like, when we were trying to pick some episodes, I didn't even read descriptions in those syndicated seasons. Because basically, like, even reading season 2, many of them didn't even include Henry's name in the description, and I'm just like, well, I don't want to see him sidelined. Yeah,
he was totally not in the one I saw where she had the restaurant. It was one of those ones where they had a fancy food critic was stuck in town, and they saw it as an opportunity, so they wanted to impress him. So that old thing about, you got to, and something goes wrong, of course, like they thought a customer died.
Right.
at his table while the critic was there.
Wait, didn't that happen on Alice?
That happened on every show. I'm pretty sure that happened on Three's Company too.
I think the critic actually died on Alice.
Well, okay, it wasn't the critic. It was a different.
Oh,
a different customer. Yes, it was a customer that was there, like cheating on his wife, which is another interesting thing about Punky Brewster. And his date leaves, and he makes some comment or whatever, and slumps over his burger that Sherry made with her special sauce.
I'm glad they kept her around.
Yeah, well, the whole episode, it didn't, even by Punky Brewster's standards, it was totally ridiculous. And just the fact that Punky's running this restaurant by herself. So, yeah, you didn't miss much, I don't think.
Yeah.
However, in the first couple seasons, they did have some other very special episodes. I did watch one where they learned CPR, and actually Punky saves a life. Punky and her friend Margot save Sherry's life because she hides in. They're playing hide and seek, and she hides in the old refrigerator.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, that Henry's going to have removed, and he's got it sitting out there, like in this little lot area behind the building, and she hides in there, and luckily Henry and Punky's wiseacre friend Alan find her, and fortunately they learn CPR, and it's a really weird thing, and they actually make a point to showing it so that the kids can realize what they're doing, but that was definitely a very special episode that I'm sure freaked a lot of kids out.
Yeah, I mean, it has at least 2 bits of good advice too. I mean, learn CPR and don't get in refrigerators.
Yeah, do you remember that? I mean, when I was growing up, that was a real big thing. Like, don't hide in refrigerators.
Yeah.
How dangerous it was, and that was like a big thing.
Yeah.
It must have been like PSAs, but I remember. I don't really remember from this episode. I think probably the like frozen meat lockers, like in the Brady Bunch, had more impression on me than an actual refrigerator. But it was that was a thing. Like the danger of hiding in a refrigerator or going into a refrigerator, playing with them.
Right. Yeah.
And Henry even said in that episode, "I don't want you playing anywhere near that." You know, and he tells them, but somebody missed the memo.
So Cherry, Margot, Alan, these are all her friends?
Yeah. And I know Alan left after the second episode, it seems like. I think he was, or second season, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But he's this little blonde kid that's got to a real, like in the CPR episode, he's making jokes and Mike actually sends him to the principal's office because he's not taking it seriously. So then later when he and Henry find it, Henry's like, "Do you know CPR?" And he's like, "No, I wasn't paying attention. Went to the principal's office." And he's like, "Go get the paramedics," And so, fortunately, Punky and Margot that were paying attention come out and they do save her.
Oh, good.
And it's real weird because so the grandmother comes down and Sherry's like barely conscious after being revived. Who knows what had gone on, how long she had been lost consciousness. And he's like, "Don't worry, she's fine." It's like, well, she's not exactly fine.
Yeah.
She's breathing, which is an improvement in talking, but she might have suffered some kind of brain damage here.
I know the answer to this. The next episode, Cherry moves out.
That I can't verify. And they did an episode on the Challenger disaster. Yeah. They addressed that, which was probably a good thing. I mean, there were a lot of kids. We were affected by that.
It definitely freaked me out.
Now, I don't remember that episode, but
no.
I'm curious. I may wind up watching that one as well.
Yeah. There
was some kind of infamous cave episode where seems to sound more like a horror movie where, again, Punky seems to be in jeopardy a lot.
Yeah.
You mentioned the drug episode. Mm-hmm. And, who knows how many
there must be one where her mom comes back.
I don't think that ever happened. Huh. Well, do you happen to know what the last episode of the series finale of Punky Brewster revolves around?
Henry and Punky moving to L.A.
Okay, that's a good guess.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, many series finales, they focus on like a major life-changing event, like somebody moving.
Yes.
The return of a character, like you mentioned. A death of somebody. Well, that would be a kind of a downer, but a wedding.
A wedding.
That's something like Happy Days did that, right?
Yeah, like Henry getting married. Maybe.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there was actually Punky Brewster did end with a wedding.
Oh.
Do you know who it was that got married?
No.
Brandon the dog. You can look at it. Yes, the last episode of Punky Brewster involves a dog wedding with Brandon getting married to, I forget who it was. I don't think you'd know her from anything else. It's some other dog, and that's how they ended the show.
Wow.
So, needless to say, I don't think they exactly knew or had much advance notice that they weren't going to get picked up for another season.
I assume they probably held the dog wedding at the restaurant.
Probably, yeah.
It's like a health code violation, but...
Yeah.
It's TV.
Yeah, it's TV. She's 11 or 12.
If an 11-year-old is allowed to run her own business, she can have a dog there.
Why not? Yeah. And they probably bribed the food inspector with some burgers or something.
In Chicago.
He looked the other way.
Yeah.
Do you think they? I just had a thought. I wonder if what kind of things they might have served on the menu at Punky's Chicago restaurant. Maybe like a deep dish pizza.
Probably deep dish pizza, but with like gummy bears on it or something. It would all be very colorful.
Chicago style hot dog.
Yeah, with blue relish.
Yeah. And there's one other dish I'm wondering if they served at that restaurant. You know what I'm thinking of? I'm asking a lot of questions today, aren't I?
No.
Italian beef.
Oh, Italian beef, of course, yeah.
I hope. It's in Chicago. You got to have that,
so,
right?
Yeah. Do you think they rooted for the Bears?
Of course.
Hey, there's another, I just remembered, or is that a Chicago show? Maybe it's not. Is My Two Dads set in Chicago?
I don't remember. I think, yes. Well, it had Dick Butkus.
I know, that's why.
But he wasn't playing him.
No. But
it was New York or it might have been Chicago.
I think it might have been Chicago.
Yeah. So they might have been part of this shared universe.
Yeah.
And I guess Crime Story.
Well, yeah, but Henry probably, witnessed some of that.
Yeah.
Walking down the street.
Yeah, like in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, his beanie, he has got a bullet hole in his beanie from walking by there. I'm sure.
Yes.
He's got a million of those stories. And he probably had something to do with Mrs. O'Leary's cow, too. He used to milk her on his way home from school. He'd milk Mrs. O'Leary's cow to get extra money.
Right.
For licorice whips or something. The great Henry Warner.
God bless him.
So, do you think Punky Brewster holds up? It's an interesting show to watch now, isn't it? Clearly aimed at kids. It's got the appeal of George Gaynes, but not much else for us grown-ups, huh?
I don't think so. But, I wonder I guess the test would be to have some kids watch it. Yeah. And see if it helps.
Some of our fabled 2 to 11-year-old demographic. We'll get them together to do a focus group. I would like to have them watch that and Silver Spoons.
Yeah.
Like Silver Spoons, I think you and I enjoyed that a lot more.
Right, yeah. And I feel like kids would. I mean, I said that before, that it played like a tween show.
Yeah, and part of that is it's not just, I mean, it's scary to us, but if you think about it, there's a lot of kids fiction deals with being abandoned by kids. I mean,
or parents, yeah.
Yeah, kids being abandoned by parents and dark themes and things like that. So I guess, I don't know how much of a wish fulfillment is, but by the end of the show, hey, you get your own restaurant.
You're right.
Works out pretty good. And even from the beginning of the show of Punky Brewster, I mean, she gets this big room and gets to decorate it by herself. And so it worked out pretty good for Punky. Not that I'd recommend it for most family units.
No.
Don't abandon your kids.
No.
Kids don't abandon your parents.
Yeah.
And kids don't abandon other kids either. It's just not good.
No.
We all need each other.
Abandonment, just in general, bad.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Don't abandon a podcast if you're making a podcast.
No, and we have not done that, and nor will we.
No.
As long as we've got more episodes of Punky Brewster. Wait a minute, no. We'll move on from Punky Brewster, right?
Right, yeah.
I think there's other shows I'd revisit before I revisit Punky Brewster.
Well, I only have one more thing to say.
Oh, yeah? What's that, Mike?
Punky.
This episode brought to you by Henry Warnemont Photography. This episode also brought to you by Lenny the Loop. I got your tickets right here, pal. This episode also brought to you by Laugh, the League Against Urban Fear. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.
Punky.